Welcome to Work Comp Talk, a podcast dedicated for injured workers here in California. Think of it as a workers' comp 101 session, along with my co-host, Bilal Qasim, managing attorney of Pacific Workers, the Lawyers for Injured Workers, which also happen to be our sponsors. If you like what you hear, if you've already been a fan of the podcast, make sure you guys share the podcast with other people, subscribe and like us on social media so that way we can continue to create more content for you. Speaking about content in this podcast, we are going to be diving into one of the most hottest questions every injured worker would and should know, which is how much money can you make, or how much more money can you potentially make with certain tips and tricks for your workers' compensation claim? And who better than Bilal to answer that question and break it down for us so it's easily digestible. So first of all, Bilal, welcome back. I'm glad to be back. Thank you.
It's good to have you. We missed you on the last episode.
We sure did, but you were doing an amazing job with the rest of the doctors, which we thank as well. If you haven't seen that podcast, make sure you jump on that one as well so you can get some tips and tricks from the actual doctors behind the scenes, the heroes behind the workers' comp claims. So how can someone get more money in there? Is it even a possibility? Can you get more money in your workers' comp claim?
Yeah, so step one, don't file workers' comp.
Oh, gosh.
Step two, go buy a lotto ticket.
Step three, hope to win the lottery.
Hope to win, and you're probably going to do better than you would with workers' comp.
Oh, gosh.
No, I say that because it's kind of a joke. You know, workers' comp really, it's a shitty system, unfortunately. But there's certain things you can do to improve your chances of having a better outcome in workers' comp.
Well, I'm glad you actually said that because unfortunately, there are a lot of people that think that because they are injured at work, they're going to become millionaires, that they're going to instantly grow some type of lottery winning and they've hit the jackpot. That's not necessarily true.
No, and I think I've talked about this before. So there was this grand bargain way back in the day where injured workers gave up their right to have those lottery ticket type lawsuits where they could retire and sue employers in personal injury and civil court. And now they have workers' comp, which is that benefits delivery system that's designed to compensate them for their injuries, but not necessarily reward them. It's not designed to punish employers or set the person up for the rest of their life.
Interesting. So tell me, what is the number one thing everyone should do, or anyone who's injured at work, to potentially know that they're essentially going to get something better?
I mean, treating is one of the biggest ones. You know, I think there's a lot of people who don't necessarily show enthusiasm for being proactive and going to the doctor's appointments, listening to what their doctor has to say and following up and making sure they're actively trying to get better and treat their injuries. There's a lot of people who they forget to go to the doctor, or they don't pay much attention to what the doctor's recommending, you know, things like that. And the insurance company bases their decision to settle and pay out more money based on the fact that they perceive that someone's going to be a long-term financial risk for them. That's it. So if we don't settle with this person, are they going to cost us a shit ton of money over the next 20 years? And if they think you are going to cost them money, then yeah, they're going to pay you more because they want you to go away.
Right.
If, you know, you say, hey, I want to settle my workers' comp case, but you haven't been to the doctor in 3 years, they don't see that as a risk. They're not going to pay you much for that.
Right.
So, you know, being proactive, following up on treatment, you know, listening to what your doctor has to say, provided it's a good doctor, which is another topic. Make sure you're with the right treating doctor. But, you know, if you got a good doctor in your corner, that's the doctor you want to be with. You should listen to them. You should follow their instruction. You should be diligent. Go to all your appointments. Go to your physical therapy. Go to your chiropractic care. Do everything they say.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's something that you essentially would want to do because you're trying to get better. The last thing you want to do is not show up to appointments, not get the medication you need, because it's only going to get worse. So that's kind of like a common sense type, right? Make sure you treat correctly, show up to your appointment, stop flaking it, because then it seems like you're really not in pain and then you really don't have anything to go for.
Yeah, and you know, I'll say that sometimes it's not the client's choice. You know, we have a lot of clients where they can barely afford to put food on their table for their family, and they can't afford to transit themselves to their medical appointments, which is a different issue.
Yeah.
But when you're injured at work, you have to treat your medical appointments, and your well-being is priority number one. You know, you have to really focus on that. And sometimes that means making sacrifices. It doesn't mean sacrifice your kids, but, you know, really make sure you really are prioritizing, if you have limited funds, where you're deploying those funds so that you can make it to doctor's appointments and you can be diligent about doing those things. And if you're having issues with those things and you have an attorney, talk to them. Maybe they can help you out, you know?
Right. You mentioned something earlier, and I kind of wanted to touch base on this, and that was essentially if they're offering you more money, it's because you're going to cost them money. So they'd rather pay you up front right now and give you a hefty amount. I know it's out of the subject as far as how to make more money, but it just rang a bell to me. It's like, describe that a little bit more in the sense. I don't want people to take it the wrong way and say, oh, I'm going to get more money because X, Y, and Z.
No, so they call them actuaries. They work for insurance companies, right?
Oh.
And actuaries, they study risk and they assign risk profiles and they calculate costs. And their whole idea is like, where do you set your prices and where do you set your costs and how do you make money given anticipated things that are going to happen? So when you're looking at insurance companies, they are for profit in America.
Of course.
Their goal is to take in more in premiums and they pay out in claims so that they have profits. That's it. And so to be a profitable company, you need to keep costs down. And to keep costs down, you need to spend less on claims. And to do that, you need to know when to determine whether or not it's in the insurance company's interests to offer money to potentially curb the long-term financial risk of keeping a case open.
Make you go away.
And
Interesting.
so when they're looking at a case and you haven't cost them any money, they don't care if you go away. If you cost them a lot of money, they want you to go away. And it doesn't mean that they're going to offer you the full value of what their liability is. It just means they're going to offer you something that is palatable enough for them and palatable enough for you that you'll walk away and cost them less over time.
That sucks. So you better think about that twice. That's not a way to make more money for sure. So you might want to get yourself an attorney if you all of a sudden get this hefty, nice little settlement right away. Like, oh, we'll give you this much. That just tells you there's something down the line. That's a tip right there. Okay, so we already know. Treating with your doctors is the number one way to ultimately get more money in your case when you're injured at work. What's tip number 2?
Tip number 2, and probably just as important, if not more important, is having the right QME on your case. QME stands for Qualified Medical Evaluator, and that is a doctor that basically decides everything in your case. They don't provide treatment. That's not their job. Their job is simply to look at your medical records, do an evaluation, and decide things like your work status, your work restrictions, whether or not you're still temporarily disabled. If you're not temporarily disabled, you're permanent stationary, or MMI, maximum medical improvement, what your permanent disability rating is. And all these things obviously are what drives the value of a workers' comp case.
So these type of doctors are the data analytical persons of your case. They dissect your medical records and everything that's going on and kind of foresee what's going to happen with your workers' comp case.
Yeah, and they might see you once, they might see you twice in a case, it just depends. But their job really is kind of to set the value of the case in a lot of ways, for our side. And you can end up with a bad QME and you can end up with a good QME. We've had clients come to us with bad QMEs, and the QME is, one case in mind that came up was a person who was a chef for a place in San Francisco. I'm not going to name the employer, but they had been working as a chef for like 20 years for this place. And of course, I know, I worked in a kitchen. It's a hell of a lot of work, right? And especially if you're moving a lot of food around and stuff. And this person injured themselves. Finally, they were lifting a sack of potatoes, which are extremely heavy, and they blew out their back. And so this person ended up with a QME. The QME said, no, your back has nothing to do with the fact that you were, injured at work and a chef for 20 years. It was because you did something at home. And that was it. And this person, unfortunately, had a lumbar spine fusion that went really bad. And so he had to have a pain pump installed in his spine. So it's just like a constant flow of heavy medication. And he can't do anything anymore. He's basically, a vegetable for all intents and purposes.
Dang.
He can't go back to work as a chef or do anything. Can't even pick up his daughter. And he has a QME that says, literally, you get nothing.
That's
absolutely nothing. And that case came to us, and trying to fight that back is much more difficult than it is to get the right QME from the beginning, because we have to argue with that guy, though, is an orthopedist who's been practicing 30 years about why he's wrong as a doctor. It's incredibly difficult.
So how do you get a bad QME? Like, how do I know I'm going to get a QME that's horrible?
If you're someone in the industry, you'd know who the QMEs are.
Right.
And, I think that's the benefit of having lawyers, because I know if I get well, let me take it back. You get a panel, a state-issued panel of 3 doctors of any given specialty that's requested, and each side gets rid of a doctor they don't like. If you're an injured worker, you simply select one doctor from the panel, and that's your QME. The insurance company loves orthopedic QMEs and occupational medicine QMEs because they're typically the most conservative. Mm-hmm. And in that particular case, this was an orthopedist. Mm. And so orthopedists tend to look at cases in like a closed universe. They're like, is there anything wrong with your bones, your joints, or your ligaments? Like, no, okay, there's nothing wrong with you.
Gotcha.
Versus another particular field, maybe physical medicine rehabilitation or pain medicine anesthesiology physicians will look at you and say, okay, well, you have pain, you have these symptoms, let's figure out why. Maybe you need an orthopedic consult, maybe you need a rheumatology consult or internal medicine consult or something. They're more exploratory, and I think thinking in a broader scope than orthopedists typically look at least
being realistic.
But they just tend to be more liberal. And so, you know, on the applicant side, we always tend to go more for like physical medicine rehabilitation, pain medicine anesthesiologists, or even chiropractic professionals for evaluations, which obviously can make or break a case.
Right. Because, I mean, you could have your ligaments on point, you could have your bones really strong and everything, but if you're dying in pain, that's still going to affect your everyday life and things that you're doing. So you still have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, a common diagnosis I see come up a lot in that particular example is what's called chronic regional pain syndrome, which is a significant, you know, condition that impacts people beyond what you would see with just, you know, an MRI or an X-ray or things like that you'd typically get if you have like a broken bone or herniated disc and things like that. And people are dealing with real chronic pain that's not so easily apparent. And there's physicians that are trained to identify and address that, and there's physicians that are not. And if you go to a physician that's not, and they look at an MRI of your back that says there's really not much there or something, or your knee or your leg or whatever it is, they're going to say, okay, well, there's not much wrong with you, even though you're sitting there screaming, I'm in pain. Yeah. Why doesn't anyone believe me? You know, and you're left with nothing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yikes. That's kind of scary. So we know treating is number 1. Number 2, and as good as number 1, is making sure you choose the right QME. That's where you get an attorney that's going to help you choose this right QME. Number 3. How can you make more money from your workers' comp case? What can you do differently to make sure you're getting the maximum benefit possible?
I'm going to break this in 2.
Okay.
The first one, it's just simple. Never accept the first offer.
We've talked about this a lot in other episodes.
We did a video on this.
Yes,
so
we did.
I just got that one out of the way because go watch that video, right?
Yep.
Don't ever accept the first offer. Usually the first offer they're throwing at you is garbage. But they know, look, $10,000 is a lot of money to me. It's a lot of money to anyone. If I get an offer from an insurance company for $10,000, it's tempting. Even if your condition's way worse and your case is worth way more money, you might actually take it just because of your needs. But you know, more often than not, they're just dangling that in front of you because they know, hey, it's quick, easy for them, and they'll get rid of you. So never accept the first offer. That's a tip. And then along with that, you got to know what your case is worth. And that's the importance of hiring an attorney.
Yeah.
Because, and we've talked about this in other videos too, we've had a lot of clients come to us and they don't understand workers' comp. They don't know what they're entitled to. They don't know what their case is worth. And a lot of them come to us with settlement offers that are trash. And we've sometimes gotten them offers that are, you know, 300, 400% more.
Yikes.
Just because we could read the reports. We know what the case is worth.
Yeah. And they'll take advantage. Don't think that just because the person's nice to you or the claims adjuster has been so nice to you that they're going to have you at their best interests. They're definitely not. If anything, the one you want to be friends with, the one you actually want to, I don't know, bring a donut, bring coffee to is your QME doctor. That's who you want to be good with.
Be nice to your QME.
Don't give attitude.
Don't give them attitude. Don't give their staff attitude. Be nice to QMEs.
Yes.
And be nice to your treating doctor too. They deserve it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, lawyers, we just done it, you know.
You guys have done it for so many years.
You know it. It's, you know, a lot of us have spent a decade or more dealing with the same judges, the same insurance adjusters, the same doctors. Like we know who's who. The law is pretty well settled for the most part, and we know what cases are worth. We know what doctors to send clients to.
Right.
We know what QMEs to avoid and what specialties to avoid. We know what your case is worth, and I think because we've had so much specialized training and knowledge, we're better suited to help you than you helping yourself.
Right. It's kind of like your car breaking down and you're like, you know what? I can fix it. I'll go get a book or YouTube this video and I'll figure it out on my own. But it's like there's tips and tricks to get certain things, with certain tools that are created to fix cars. It's the same thing with workers' comp. Yeah, you can essentially do it on your own, but there's a lot of things you're probably going to miss out on. And it goes into any rule in life, whether you're a baker. I mean, how many bakers do not have tips and tricks to make things fluffier and stuff, that you wouldn't otherwise know because you followed just this plain recipe.
Experience matters.
It does. It does. So that's great. It's great to know that there are things you can do to maximize your compensation when you're injured at work. And it's an eye-opener to also know that you can potentially be leaving money on the table just because you didn't know this stuff. And that is a bummer because a lot of people feel like, well, I don't need to pay an attorney X amount of money just for them to represent me. I can represent my own. Yes, you can, but there's also a lot that can be left behind.
And there's some firms, my firm, for example, we've had clients come to us and maybe they had some settlement offers along the way and they come to us and, we take on their case and maybe everything happened in the right way and maybe we couldn't get more for them. Mm-hmm. We'll always have a conversation and a dialogue with the client, and we're not there to just take money from people. And so we understand, like, hey, look, if you had an offer that was on the table before we took your case and the offer that you finally ended up with is the same or not substantially more, we're not going to take a 15% attorney fee from them. We'll deal with it. We'll make sure that they got a fair shake. But I think more often than not, actually like 99% of the time, we do get clients more money. And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of other workers' comp firms too. But, I think just having someone who understands it, there's going to be a lot more that you're aware of than someone going through themselves that wouldn't even know to ask for.
Exactly. Well, that is amazing to know that there are options out there. But thank you so much, Bilal, for diving in and giving us these tips and tricks on how to potentially get more money with the workers' compensation case. If you are currently going through a case and you need help, you can also reach out Pacific Workers at their website, pacificworkers.com. They speak Spanish, hablan español. They potentially help out thousands and thousands of clients. They've recovered, over $200 million for sure.
Over $200 million taken from the insurance companies and put into the hands of people who deserve it.
That's amazing. It's good to hear. So we'll catch you guys on another episode of Work Comp Talk. Hope you guys like and subscribe our channel so you guys can keep getting some more information.